Live streaming is on.
Oh, right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Jitsi Community Call. We're going to do things slightly differently today, and hopefully every week in the future from now on. We have our first ever guest speakers, guests of honor, Marco and Gabriele from the CEO and the CTO of WeSchool. WeSchool are, hi guys. So just as a
Hi,
very
happy to
brief,
be here.
thank you very much for being here. Just as a very brief intro, WeSchool is a very solid online learning platform that is being hugely popular currently, very widely used in Italy. They are also a Jitsi user, and we're here to hear them talk about their experience as an online learning platform, how COVID has impacted their history, their COVID experience, and also their experience with Jitsi. And hopefully this will be of interest to the entire community. So Marco, tell us a little bit about WeSchool. What is the intro? Marco, you're muted. I don't know if you're talking.
Oops.
Okay, Gabriele, why don't you start and then Marco will take. Oh, there he is. Is he back now?
I don't know.
Okay, why don't you start, Gabriele? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history and he'll join.
I just start. I hope Marco will come back soon because he is the master of telling about WeSchool because he's live since years and he thought about it, he developed it. So for sure he's the better person for this. But I will start telling it. Or maybe he's back. I see a big face of him, but he's not back. Okay, so WeSchool now is the leading platform for education in Italy. It's the Italian platform for Italy. We are years back. We started the project in 2016, and we already had a quite success in Italy because we had many professors already choosing us for the regular classes, and just of course now the situation is completely different, and is one of the main choices. Is the main Italian choice. It's the only Italian choice actually for the Ministry of Education for sustain the school during this sanitary emergency. And
so what was it used for before this entire thing started? What schools were using this remote education tool? Was it regular schools or some special online learning schools, or how was it working?
We have never, just in the first time we reached the schools to have an adoption school-wide. Since we discovered the Italian school in particular, I don't know if in abroad is more, they accept more new technologies. In Italy, schools tend to avoid to get into more things because they have some friction, particularly from the main part of the teaching, the teachers. So we moved instead of going school by school, we decided to attract the teachers that already were ready to approach a digital school. And so I won't say we were spread into schools. So we were actually, but mostly was spread to teacher. And we had already a huge percentage of teachers in the. I see Marco is trying to talk to us in another way, and so we already a lot of teachers mainly were from secondary schools. It was already, if I remember well, like 20% of teachers, and we were every year's increasing this number. Of course, all teachers are more reluctant, I would say, to get into a digital system for many reasons. One of that is that are, of course, reluctant to use technology in general. And younger teachers are more courageous to take this choice and to change the way they are teaching. Also, and one thing I think is very important is that we are not trying to move school into a virtual world. We are trying to move into the real world, into the physical world, some brand new aspects of digital innovation. So what the method of teaching that we are sharing with the teachers so that they can use it for the students is not something you have to do with a computer. It's not something you have to do with a smartphone or a tablet. It's not mandatory to have a digital system, but we think with the WeSchool that is way more easier. So
got it.
So
yeah.
it's not.
So Marco is
Can you
back.
hear me?
Okay.
Yes,
we can.
I'm back and I'm trying to share the screen also to give you.
Everyone is seeing your screen now. Yes.
Okay. So we are basically a classroom collaboration platform, and we enable teachers to really augment what they're doing in their physical classes. So as Gabriele was saying, it's not just about technology. You can use those kind of tools also in real life classes. For example, to get a real-time feedback about what your students are understanding or not. Before the emergency, we had about 100,000 teachers. And at the end of February, when the government shut it down, the Italian school system, since the first days, we had a huge amount of traffic. And we have now 1.2 million active users daily. But what happened at the beginning was that Jitsi, which was at the beginning, let's say a corner use case, a limited use case, we had set up, Gabriele had set up Jitsi with his colleagues on our servers on Amazon. And what happened was that at the beginning of emergency, of course, the most requested feature for WeSchool was the live presence. At the beginning, we started to handle this by ourselves for the first week, I guess. And meanwhile, a super amount of you. Just think that we had 5,000 support tickets daily, new support tickets daily. So we have set up a 30 people team only for support tickets. And we were completely unable to handle this kind of traffic. We've tried for a week. And then in the on the first Sunday of March, I remember it was Sunday, 6 p.m. We gave up, and I started writing on LinkedIn to, I don't know, many guys at 848, asking for help, Emily included, and we decided to use the Jitsi hosted SaaS environment to help the Italian school system. Meanwhile, what happened was that, I don't know if you still can see my screen.
Yes, sure.
But basically our mini.
Oh, lost again.
Yeah, Marco, we don't hear you right now. Gabriele, would you like to take over?
Yeah, I wish I was in Marco's mind. I think that
you are not?
I think he was going to say that at some point the Ministry of Education, as I was saying before, chose us as an official platform. As you can see from this from the sharing screen, and so that made us beat every kind of record that we had in the days before. So at the end, that Monday probably was one of the highest peak in connection we had, and for sure, well, it's not probably now we have more users in the same time, but that day was like a wave, tsunami crashing on our platform, since the traffic compared to the week before was completely different in size and activity.
That is, yeah, we get
So
that.
and I think also you figured out something about that. I mean, that week was kind of a rush for everybody.
Yeah, we're absolutely going to talk about that as well. That was a brutal week. I remember we were sorry about that. So I remember we were every night we would just go and it would be to double the traffic from the day before, 4 times the traffic from the day before, and every day Marco will be messaging us and he's like, Emil, still not working, users are complaining, there's plenty of support tickets, it's not working. And then we would go on the next day and make improvements, and then we'd tell you, okay, we got you guys, come over the next time, it should be fine. And then the next night it's again, still not working, Emil. So that was
I mean, I think for sure frustrating for both sides, because we really didn't know what to do. I was the first one to surrender the week before, because we were really trying to have some smart ways to handle the conference system on our side, but the week before was still like trying. Sometimes was working, sometimes was not working. We couldn't figure out how much time was not working, how much time was working. But then the worst thing is that I was already imagining that there were so many people coming, and I was sure that there was beyond our force, our strength, and so that's why at the end we should to move to the community service.
So how are things now? How are things these days?
Well, now at some point it changed. So that there were still maybe sometimes problem with connections. Now I think, but Marco for sure has more the situation. Most of the problems now are no more, or there are less problems for sure on the connections part, and the most problem are on the devices of the user. So the users, Italian students now are using shitty smartphones, shitty desktop, bad connections, and that's something that we cannot handle in any way. And the other part is that there was some situation as Zoom bombing that was happening on the classroom.
Yeah, yes. So what is the hijacking story? I've heard some very interesting stories from you on how that actually plays out.
What happened was basically that the students created Telegram groups to share Jitsi links, and not just Jitsi links, also Zoom and so on, to make jokes. So they used to enter the one in the group of the other students in the other class, saying super bad words in the best cases, and in the worst cases, well, adding images. But well, you can try to guess which kind of images. So what happened was when
Wikipedia images, I assume, right?
Yeah,
educational articles. Yes.
Yes, about King Arthur and his episodes.
Exactly.
And so what happened was that teachers were scared about digital learning in general. When this began to happen, they were super scared, and they began to go to the police, saying what was happening. And so we started having dozens and dozens of emails from the police, asking information about what was happening. And all the newspapers were full of these Zoom bombing articles. And this was hard because we were focused on keeping up the service working. So I don't know if Gabriele mentioned this, but our API had peaks of 40 million requests every hour. And if you add to all these police-related and legal-related issues, well, it wasn't happy. And so we of course we talked to Emil, and we decided to basically change the way we use Jitsi to be sure that the link was hidden even for authorized students, in order to avoid and forbid them to share the links, because they don't know the link in the first place. So we started embedding Jitsi with using Jitsi API. And so basically the URL was not in the navigation bar anymore, more of a browser. And then also the Jitsi app was changed in order to avoid from the mobile. From the mobile you can share the link of the conference where you are in. And so not we, actually, you and the Jitsi team changed that in order to have a flag to hide this kind of share, in order to prevent those kind of episodes.
And you had a funny story about these unwelcome participants.
Yes. Yes, there was. Yes, there was this school saying that there was an unauthorized person. They made they denounced it to the police. This yellow guy, because in Italy, basically nobody is able to talk and understand English. Well, not anybody, but a large part of the population. And so basically they read fellow Jitsi, but they understood yellow something, and they said that to the police. And so we had to face this, saying that there was no yellow guy. It was just the actual students, just with the placeholder you use.
That's almost like Jack the Ripper, this yellow guy that comes and hijacks your conferences. Quite an urban legend. Well, I guess that's funny. I found that was very interesting. So, what would you say are your biggest challenges right now? Are you able to focus back on the actual education? Is video still a big problem? What are you working on these days?
Well, actually, video is still an issue. Every solution has its pros and cons. So, for example, just to make a concrete example, the fact that Teams doesn't support yet a grid view is really helping us of using Jitsi, because, as you know, Jitsi is super strong in the grid view, as Zoom is. And in the long term, what we are preparing to is to really enable in September Italian universities to use WeSchool. We have still to work on this, because WeSchool has been designed for K-12, for high school and middle school. And we'd like them to use more and more WeSchool with Jitsi instead of, for example, Teams, which is super popular in university in Italy. And in order to do that, we really need an help from the Jitsi community for what concerns the amount of physical and hardware resources used by Jitsi, because the bottleneck that we are facing, please consider that we receive thousands and thousands of support tickets every day by the Italian community, is related to, we thought at the beginning it was a matter of bandwidth, but it's not. It's about CPU and memory. So if, let's say, if I need to summarize as WeSchool, but I think it's also an opportunity for the entire open source Jitsi community to really boost what we are doing and the social impact we are having. I think that the priority number one is to really have a tool which uses less resources and can you hear me, and can compete with, well, you know who, in the best way.
That is interesting. Is there, by the way, for anyone watching this, please feel free to write your questions for the WeSchool team, for Gabriele and Marco, in the YouTube comment section, and also obviously anyone from the team on this call. If you have any questions for them, please feel free to ask them now. Is there anything else you'd like to share with other Jitsi users out there, or just other people facing brutal moves to online with the current crisis?
Well, I'd like to hear your answers, of course. And I just want to say that as a fan, since I was 14, of Free Software Foundation and open source movement in general, I think that it's a pity for the entire world digital community, the fact that the video conference sector in the industry is so concentrated in 4, 5, 6 players. And we should really do the best we can do to enable an easy DevOps of those kind of solution. I think that DevOps and infrastructure is the main issue, since, well, Jitsi is a powerful solution, but you don't
hard to scale
yes,
it without
you don't need just Jitsi. Just think about our story. We had Jitsi, we have AWS, but it wasn't enough. We weren't able to handle this. So in order to have a free world for what concerns this, we really need to have the scaling easier.
Yeah, that let me actually talk a little bit about that. So indeed, the CPU constraints, the resource constraints on devices that would prevent people from having a productive experience are something that comes up significantly, and it's a hard problem. So because on the one hand you have, for example, all the browser usage, and from a browser you don't really know that much about what's going on with the operating system. So it's hard to say whether you're using 99% or 10% of your available resources. But we are looking for other options. We are working on one of the things that's happening right now is that Jaya actually recently worked on changing the the quality moderation settings, and making them apply to also what the user is sending, which was, I would say, a big something that we were very obviously missing before. Encoding is one of the biggest consumer of resources, and being able to now apply constraints to that is hopefully something we'll do. We'll try to make this part of the API as well, but I mean, obviously, ideally, all of this should be automatic without requiring our users, whether the users are API users like you or end users, to have to do anything. So yeah, we know about the problem. We're thinking about it. We don't yet know exactly what we want to do about it, but we're working on it. So I'm looking at and also with regard to the scaling. I mean, there's definitely more that could be done to help just every Jitsi user scale up, but that's not. I would really. There's two things two tracks of work that will happen here. We're going to try and provide some more help. Aaron is actually going to talk about the way we scale things. And that's going to happen next Monday. But also, if you look at other projects that need scalability out there, you would see that most of the scalability manuals are often coming from people who are just sharing their experience. I was using HA proxy this way, and I made it scale using these tools. So this is something where the community can help a lot. There have been people out there, for example, the team from the NREN in Switzerland, the National Education and Research Network, have done exactly that, and hopefully we can have them on this call to comment on that in the future and share their recipes. We're going to do our fair share, and again, that's a place where the community can work a lot. At this point, I'm just going to repeat my request. Are there any questions for the WeSchool team, from the team or from the YouTube viewers? And then we're going to move to our usual team update in about 4 or 5 minutes. Anything anyone would like to ask here or on YouTube?
Don't be shy.
Right. So, well, guys, thank you, by the way, for joining us. This is really interesting, and thank you for everything that you're doing for people out there that are stranded.
Thank you for your help.
There's a question.
What Jitsi is doing. Okay.
So Mark is asking whether you're using an iframe. How exactly does your integration work?
This is for Gabriele.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. I'm prepared. So basically, we had already a system that was generating a UED for have a collision-free identifier for every classroom. And we decided to write in on, since it's just a browser problem. The Jitsi app already we managed with Emil and your team to obfuscate the URL. The only edge problem was on the browser, so we decided just for the browser to save a cookie that was then can be referenced also in another window, in another tab, to save that just the conference ID, so just very skilled user can see that. And then we create an embed system, just with few APIs to set the username and set the main configuration to avoid the sharing buttons and the kicking out for the student and the mute. So it's very basic situation. You can replicate with any iframe. We just had now already had some. I know that there is already an issue that is going to be fixed. That unfortunately, Chrome users usually have as default that third-party cookies are disabled. So the third-party cookies from Jitsi create some conflict, and then user experience a black wall, a black window. Then we figure out that was a third-party cookie after some hours, and that solves it all. But yeah, still this moment is the main side effect on the browser experience.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the mobile integration as well?
The mobile integration, yeah, it was feasible since the latest upgrade on Jitsi. So we are generating a URL that is just go to the Jitsi URL and with more configurations.
Yeah, so why did you decide to go that way rather than embedding the Jitsi SDK yourselves? Was that just a matter of not having enough time? Were there other reasons for this?
Both of that. On the mobile system, the SDK was not feasible since we have a Cordova application that embed our single page application. So to integrate the SDK on the mobile part the meaning was to really get into tons of edge cases that we were not able to handle. So because our time was focused on other systems, other parts. So when we start the Jitsi experience was a really easy corner case. Just click on the button, go on a Jitsi conference where we generated the URL. So then to integrate in our system was getting to a really high risk to get into a bad configuration or too old phone, for example. We have users that are using yet iOS 10, and for that user, we know that WeSchool app can work, but Jitsi app doesn't work. So the easiest way was to send people to your website, and so you're doing already a great job to tell people that you have to use a modern browser or another browser. So unfortunately, that's really one of the, of course, you know very well, one of the main difficulties in with the web development. And we were having a small size of users. Now that we have a smaller size of users, now that we have this huge amount of users, we are users that probably had an old MacBook in a drawer. They take it off and gave it to the son to school, and that Mac has maybe iOS 10. They have Chrome 49. They have really old browser, really old operative system, and it's really hard to think and integrate everything on your UX and hopefully everything to work.
All right. Thank you very much, Gabriele. At this point, we're going to to let you get
Bye,
back.
guys. Thank you again for your time.
This was great, and good luck going forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for
Bye.
for attending. Bye, Gabriele. So let's just do a quick update on from the team. There's not a lot to add since last week, but we are working on an important feature that will let users be confirmed by people in the room already. Zoli, would you like to talk a little bit about our upcoming lobby, Zoli and Damien?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a new feature called Lobby Screen. This is going to let room administrators to let people in one by one, if need be. When the user wants to when this feature is turned on in a room and the user wants to join, then he or she is going to be shown with a so-called lobby screen where they can start to knock. So they enter their details, name, email, address, and they can knock. So then the administrators in the room are going to see who is knocking, and they can let them in or not. Or they can basically bypass this screen by adding a password which was previously set by a moderator. That's the main flow. This is supposed to help with unwanted people being in a room. That's all from my side. Damien?
Thanks, Zoli. And Damien, is there anything you'd like to add, or you good?
No,
right, so,
just working on logic on the back end.
So just to add a little bit to that, it is important to know that look, there are specifics to the Jitsi solution, such as the fact that you're anonymous, which limit us into what we can actually give in terms of property. The notion of ownership of a room is limited when you're only dealing with anonymous participants. And there's a second specific, which is we let you choose your name. We let you go into any room that you would like to pick. So there is a little bit of extra responsibility that comes with these things. To begin with, be careful with the names that you choose. There's a massive number of people that go to Meet Jitsi test, spelled in any language, and if you want to do that and talk to other people, that's your choice, but then just don't be surprised when there are other people in there. And secondly, when you do pick an anonymous link, a unique link, and there are various ways to do that. You heard the WeSchool folks were using UUIDs. There are obviously the forward combinations that we suggest as well. You're fairly certain that no one will be able to find that link by themselves, but also maybe don't tweet it. Right? If this is going to be a sensitive meeting, if you have known detractors, if you're an organization of some sort, you have known detractors that might want to disrupt your meeting, just work with that notion as well. Just as you wouldn't put yourselves out there in unprotected physical spaces, do not compromise the security of your meeting by yourselves. So there are various practices to achieve these different use cases, and we are probably going to do another weekly meeting on that and talk about what we recommend for different situations. For now, just make sure that only the people who you want in your meeting will know the link, and that would solve a big number of your use cases. Jonathan, you've been working on something exciting. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
I mean, it's early days yet, but I've been working on adding the VP9 support to the support in the bridge. I think once that's done, I think we should be able to get better video quality for lower bandwidth in situations where, obviously, if you have CPU support and full conference support for it. So hopefully that'll be coming within the next few weeks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Anyone else from the team wants to do any updates? going once, going twice, and we're moving to questions. So I haven't been able to keep up with all the questions. If people in here have seen things that they would like to answer, please go ahead and do so. I'm going to start with one that I saw where people were asking how to do health checks. So I think that's a topic worth spending a couple of minutes on. Would someone like to talk about the various health checks we offer in our system?
Sure. So the individual components, the server components, that is GCOFO and the video bridge, both support a health check REST endpoint. So you can hit that to see if the service is currently healthy. In our infrastructure, we use this combined with Amazon's Route 53.
Sorry to interrupt you. Where can people see the syntax of these health checks and how to make them?
I'm not sure if there's any docs out there, but it's simply /about/health on the REST port. So for the bridge, that defaults to port 8080. For GCOFO, it defaults to 8888.
Thank you very much.
So unfortunately, Aaron is not here. He knows more about how we use them in AWS, but the gist of it is we have multiple independent shards that are running a GCOFO instance each. And we run on a layer of HA proxies that forward traffic to these shards. The HA proxies, as well as the AWS Route 53 layers, monitor the health of each shard by hitting the GCOFO health check REST endpoint. And when a shard is down, we stop routing traffic to it. Another layer, so I think for the shards, we only check the health of a GCOFO. The health of a GCOFO, though, includes the GCOFO itself checking the health of the bridges that it has. So a GCOFO with no active healthy bridges is not considered healthy. And for the bridge, these health checks are additionally exposed through an XMPP API, which GCOFO uses. So GCOFO runs health checks to the bridges periodically as well. I think that's about it. I don't know if I'm sure I've missed a lot of detail here, but that's the gist of it.
Obviously, people can always resort to community.jitsi.org, and also many people have pointed out that our documentation can use some help. We are welcoming PRs. If there are any existing MD files that you would like to our GitHub repos, please submit them with a PR to the project, and we'll be very grateful to accept and review them in the opposite order, review and accept them. There was a question about screen sharing on iPad. Sue has looked into that some. It is an interesting use case given that iPads are being more and more used as workstations. It's something that we'd like to work on. It's not straightforward. It's sort of easier on Android. It is doable. I don't think anyone in this team would have the time to work on that in the next month or two. But if someone out there would like to submit a PR, you're most welcome to. Can Jitsi work with Kubernetes is a question. Well, it depends what you mean by that. It is definitely possible to get an instance of Jitsi run in Kubernetes, and you can scale that notion to a large deployment in a few ways. There's easier and harder ways. So there's a French company called Scaleway that did a relatively large deployment, for example, which essentially run a number of different instances on different domain names. So you would have some sort of .id domain name. And they're fronting all of that with a web page that just sends you to a random instance. And you can even incorporate load in that, which I believe they're doing. So that's a good way to get around many of the issues that you encounter when running Jitsi in containers. But it obviously presents some usability challenges. For example, with regard to scheduled meetings, if you've sent a link in a calendar that's supposed to happen in 2 weeks on one of these domain names, you kind of have to know that it's still going to be there, right? So you kind of have to keep that going, which presents a challenge with scaling up and down. So either you have to have something dynamic happening, or you just have to always keep your deployment relatively static. And that might work for some. It might be less convenient for others. Getting a larger deployment to work on Kubernetes in a fashion that's similar to Jitsi, where different components can scale individually, it is possible. This is software, right? Anything is possible. It is very challenging, though. It gets to a stage where you're using Kubernetes because you wanted to save you some time and work, and at some point it only makes so much sense to invest time in that, because it just becomes more complex to do it that way rather than just to have your own to run it VMs, which is what we've done. This has to do with, essentially, it all comes down to the fact that most of the load balancing algorithms that we have today are meant for HTTP sessions and primarily stateless. In this case, we have traffic that goes over UDP. We have stateful sessions that are supposed to stick to specific instances, and all of that is a corner case for Kubernetes and containerization systems. So this is where all of the challenge comes from. All right, there's a question about HIPAA compliance. We are not lawyers, but anyone should be able to do a note on that. It is my understanding, and you shouldn't take my word for it, that you can use Jitsi in a HIPAA compliant way. Please have a look at our privacy policy. We don't store anything, I believe, and again, don't trust me on this, because I'm not a lawyer. But as far as I know, HIPAA, we do not store anything that they treat as confidential information beyond the duration of the conference. We do not actually require anything that HIPAA treats as configuration information for you to use the service. So if you're embedding Jitsi, we believe you can do so in a HIPAA compliant way. And I cannot stress this enough, you should have a HIPAA expert comment on this. If you're running your own deployment with well-known identification parameters, then that really is a question for yourself. But you can absolutely run Jitsi in a HIPAA compliant way, because the 8x8 deployment, for example, is indeed HIPAA compliant, where the parameters are more widely known, so it's easier to make that assertion. All right. What other questions? Is there a way where an OBS virtual camera is working with Jitsi? Yes, any virtual camera device would work with Jitsi. I can even show you that, but there's a bigger challenge with OBS in that I believe its virtual camera solution does not work on Mac. I think it only works on Windows. I'm not sure about Linux, actually. You can use virtual camera software to and plug that as a regular device on your machine when you're running your Jitsi browser, and Chrome understands these devices as long as they're done in a OS compliant way, which is what I'm doing right now. You can see my virtual background, and I'm doing this with a virtual camera. So this is kind of out of scope for Jitsi. it's sort of a noise thing. All right. Has anyone in the team seen questions that they would like to take? Because I'm kind of getting to the end of the line. We are going to go for 13 more minutes here. Okay, so there's Jitsi demo highlights use of live stream Jibri, like you're doing now onto YouTube, but the documentation is so light on that side. Will there ever be better integrations out of the box with Jibri? So that's a great question. Someone here, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe our Docker Compose setup does include a Jibri. Am I wrong about that?
I know it was in a PR, but I don't know what happened. And I think there are a few issues to be solved there. At least
Great.
what I know.
So okay, so that might be, I might be mistaken about that then. It might have never made it out of the PR state. It definitely is not included on the Debian packages. Will it ever become part of the default install? It would be great if it did. It's not a trivial thing to do because you want that to be running on a different instance in a different space than the actual Jitsi, because it'll be very demanding. It would need very peculiar audio and video configurations. So it's a challenging setup to maintain and put in place. So there's nothing preventing us from doing it other than the effort that it would take to streamline it. So the answer is yes, it would likely land someday in an easy to install way. I have no idea when that day would be. It depends on a lot of things.
It's already a Debian package for it, but there are many manual steps that need to be taken care of, like the kernel and devices and stuff like that. So
just to stress, there is indeed a Debian package. It's not part of the Debian packages that get installed when you just go and install Jitsi Meet. And as Damian is saying, the configuration isn't straightforward, which is a pity. But there are so many things that it would be great that we did better, and we're trying our best, one step at a time. Let's see what else we got. Which is the preferred OS for the server to run on? Well, we run it on Ubuntu. Beyond that, our Debian packages are obviously meant for Debian-based systems. So that kind of makes your life easier if you follow these steps. If you want to run it on other operating systems, you're obviously free to do so, but we haven't tried to make it easier there. All right, what else we got? I'm scrolling back a little bit for other questions that we can answer here. Anyone else from the team wants to add anything? Answer any questions that have popped up in the YouTube channel? Okay, in that case, I'm going to cut the live stream here. We're going to pop up shortly back in Meet Jitsi / the call, as we usually do. We're going to stay there for a few minutes in case there's a few quick questions for a back and forth answer. Final question: is there a course on Jitsi for students? Wouldn't that be a great deal? We've been doing that in. There were a few classes around Jitsi in the University of Strasbourg, the University of Sofia, and the University of Texas Austin. None of those are happening right now. So if there is interest for that to happen at your university, you can try to reach out to us and see if we can help. Obviously, with the existing resources, we're not going to be able to jump everywhere, but maybe there are some places where we can do something. All right, yo. Thank you very much for joining this call, and see you again next week, same time, where Aaron will be talking about our deployment. And so that should be a fun session. Largely helpful probably for many of you here, so make sure you attend. Thank you for joining, and see you next week. Bye-bye.